Hi, this is Misha, and we've done quite a few videos on Japanese guns, and I was looking what we had really put up, and I realized we never recorded one on this here specifically. This is the Japanese Type 35 Arisaka, chambered in 6.5 Japanese, 6.5 by 50 semi-rim. It's been in quite a few videos. We did one comparing the bolt in this to the one in the Type 30 and the Type 38. But we never really talked about this gun specifically, and since it's kind of one of my favorites, just because it was fun to get and a little challenging, I thought we'd just do a short little vid. Also, I brought out, and this has its own video too, this is the so-called Type 0245. That's not its real name. That's just what Americans call it. This is definitively a very last-ditch version, but it's based heavily on the Type 35. As you see, these are both long rifles with a 31-inch barrel. They never really did a carbine because these were in production so briefly. The first Japanese smokeless powder infantry rifle was the Murata Type 22. But there were a lot of developments in the late 19th century, and soon the Arisaka Type 30, designed by Colonel Arisaka, would replace it. It fired a much more modern bullet. It was a more modern design, more modern magazine, just all around more modern and better for mass production. The Japanese Army adopted the Type 30, but the Navy wasn't so sure. The Type 30 was a good design, but it had some issues, and these were really borne out in the Russo-Japanese War. It was susceptible to dust, so on and so forth. The Navy held out for this version here. Now, where the Type 35 came from, Nambu, Kijiro Nambu of pistol fame, was a junior member of the staff working on the original Type 30, and with the 35 he had a hand. It was basically his update, his modernization of that design. And this is what the Japanese Navy adopted in 1902. And we're pretty different from the Type 30. The barrel assembly and all that and the stock are quite similar, but the upper handguard has this kind of groove in it. And this is a completely different style of rear sight, which, you lift like this and then it locks in. Has a little spring there. Very different from the typical ladder style. To help keep dust out of the action, we have the first dust cover on an Arisaka, but this is a manual dust cover. It has a little spring clip here. You push forward, and then it locks into the receiver up here and exposes your bolt for cycling. We still have a 5-round vertical internal double stack mag. The bolt itself has been updated some, as you saw in our bolt comparison video, which actually you probably didn't because it didn't get a lot of views, but I think it's mechanically kind of interesting, so if you go check that out, that'd be kind of neat. We still have a rotating head design, but we have an improved extractor and ejector, and we have an enlarged hook safety. So he's updated the bolt a bit. And that's pretty much the differences. Otherwise, the stock and the sling swivel, all that in the back is the same. We still take the same bayonet, the Type 30 bayonet, which really all Japanese guns did through the end of World War II. Sling swivels are very similar, so on and so forth. So most of the updates were to the bolt, the rear sights, and adding this sliding dust cover. So the Navy adopted these. And it would make about 10,000. But they only make them through 1904 and 1905. This was perhaps a better gun than the Type 30, a better bolt, more reliable. However, this rear sight was pretty delicate. The spring could break, and often does on these old things. And really just the Type 38, which was also an improvement by Nambu, was just better. So in 1905, the 38 replaced the Type 35 in the Navy as well as the Army, and it was good because it meant both services were using the same gun. And that way the factories produced one gun. And so these quickly went out of production, but not out of service. The Navy would keep these on board ships through World War I in frontline service, and still have quite a few here and there by World War II, but they were getting old and there weren't a lot of replacement parts, so they weren't really heavily used. By that time, they were being replaced by more modern guns, or at the very least the 38. So today, 35s are pretty uncommon. That's why I was pretty thrilled to get one. This gun overall isn't in fantastic shape, but in the standards of Type 35s, it's actually a nicer one. Some of them are either sporterized or very, very well rusty. This one's not bad, all things considered, so I was really happy to get it. They're definitely in the realm of collector's guns, just because of the 10,000. We don't know how many survive today, but not many. These were made 110 plus years ago. So it's just one of the, I like transitional guns, I always have, and it's definitely a very much a transitional gun before they were standardized on the 38. And as I said, this critter here has its own video, but I never like having just one gun on the table if I can help it. What the 0245 is, it was a very last-ditch attempt in 1945 in Japan. They had, a few thousand, a couple of thousand old 35 actions, not complete guns necessarily, but old 35 actions, or maybe old damaged guns, worn-out guns in storage, where they pulled them out and they kind of assembled them with whatever parts they had on hand. Some of them have original 35 barrels, other ones have other 6.5 barrels. Most were put into trainer type single piece stocks. This one here and a few others were put into reworked Type 30 stocks, probably from a damaged Type 30 they had. They do have training style cast parts. For example, this rear sight is very much a trainer style rear sight. Cast hardware in some cases, with the main 35 elements being the receiver itself and, as you see, the bolt. We have the same extractor, rotating head bolt, and the same safety. So that's really the similarities. There is no standardization on these because these were literally thrown together. I have this image of someone sitting in a warehouse, an arsenal, a depot, a factory, literally taking a broom and sweeping the floor, and whatever parts they find, if they can put a rifle together, that's what they did with these. You see some with a thinned barrel. You see some that still retain either the dust cover or the grooves for the dust cover. This one never had them. Some even have the original style rear sight. All kinds of variations. This one does not have a serial number, some did, so this is probably an unfinished receiver or a prototype or a gun that was in production when they ended it, so it was never completed and serialized. You never know. But they're interesting. It's estimated that they did about 1,500 of these, which is a smaller number, of course, than the Type 35s, yet these so-called 0245s are easier to find today because they were all done very late in the war, and most of them were captured still in the home islands and never were used. So they're usually actually in pretty good shape, at least as good as they ever were, considering the parts they used to put them together. The name itself, 0245, comes from the years 1902 for Type 35 and 45 for 1945 when these were thrown together. These were also ostensibly thrown together for the Japanese Navy, who always kind of got whatever they could get. The Army always had preference when it came to small arms. Well, I feel better now that I've done my Type 35 justice. Like I said, even though pretty much all this info is a repeat, and this has been in other videos, I just felt like it really deserved its own. And it's a unique variant. Feel free to search for more info out there on these. There's just not a lot. Again, they were in service with the Navy, not the Army, so they didn't see a lot of frontline use. They were mostly kept on board ships, and just not that many survived over the years through attrition and whatnot. But a cool part of Japanese military history, and Japanese guns today, at least compared to, say, German and American and even some Russian guns that are rare, are still very affordable. It's still a good collecting field, as are Carcanos. The collector people really haven't hit the prices up crazy high on these yet. But as the other guns dry up, I suspect Japanese will be kind of the next wave, and they already have seen some elevation in the years. Well, if you like Japanese guns and have not already, please check out our other videos. We have quite a playlist of them. We're trying to be pretty thorough. If you have any questions or want to talk about your own interesting Japanese guns, we'd really appreciate it. If you like the video, please click like. If you haven't already subscribed, we'd appreciate it if you could do that. And also, we'd appreciate it if you could check out our Patreon page. This is Misha, and we'll catch you next time.